Rowan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Where in the world are you today?
I am in Brooklyn.
Chic, love Brooklyn. She's all over the place. We're always somewhere. I'm with my best friend in the world, my grandmother. She's 96 years old, growing strong. So you might see her
Amazing.
walk. There she
Oh,
is.
me too.
First time I did the blur, but anyway. Okay, so let's dive right in. So this is fantastic on so many fronts. So Tribeca Films is your distribution company.
Yeah.
So let's get the cat out of the bag. Where are people going to be able to see your project and when?
Yeah, great question. So we are currently in theaters. We just had like a week-long run at DCTV in New York. We're going to be at Vidiot's in Los Angeles on June 28th, which is a really beautiful venue. We have like a lot of sort of theatrical screenings if you look on our website, which is wearepat.com. You can find those. And then we are on demand on Amazon, Apple, Canopy, DirecTV on the 23rd of this month. And then we'll be streaming in August as well, which I can't say where, but we're going to be streaming in August.
Okay, well, everything will be in the show notes, so people can check out the show notes too. Thank you for sharing. A big, huge congratulations. So, super fan of Pat, and this is you are a super fan of Pat, and you go through your exploration in this journey through a comedic tone and feel to educate and share global phenomenons and also the dichotomy of how we're growing as an evolution. And for me, it's super educational because you have so many questions and you don't know certain things. So I think those key things I just mentioned from, witnessing your creation, the collective creation with your teams, people are going to be like really surprised and taken to a whole new depths and level of what filmmaking you actually brought to the table. Thank you so much for sharing and allowing me to debrief you on like what came to my heart and soul on your
Yeah,
project.
definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, super educational on multitude of levels, but it was I wasn't on SNL watching SNL. I had no idea so who this Pat person was. So when it came across my desk, I'm like, this is interesting. So
Yeah.
questions. Okay, for a filmmaker and they're grabbing content. How do you get the approval from SNL? Like, does your distribution or who helps you get the approval to use these, fantastic, like Adam Sandler's in it. They make so many Catherine O'Hara, they make these appearances. So how is that process as a filmmaker for you?
Yeah, so there's two ways you can go about it. One is to like approach SNL and to license the footage, but the other is within documentary, there's something called fair use, which is a legal argument that if you like basically contextualize the material and talk about it, and then you're making like a social commentary on it, that you can use it for free. So because our entire film was like an analysis and a commentary on, this cultural material, we fair used it. We ran it by our legal team and we are able to use it for free. So
That is
yeah,
so cool. That is
yeah,
so great. We have a
yeah.
lot of filmmakers tuning in, so I'm sure they question that with what you just answered, in addition to music rights and how we're making a music. But that's another podcast, another episode. Yeah, yeah. And then, so what are you most excited about from when the idea burst and then where you are now with the accomplishment and just what excites you out of everything?
Yeah, I mean it's really exciting to, I worked in the film for 5 years, so it's exciting to kind of like get to the point where we premiered at Tribeca a year ago, and now we're, like I said, we're out in theaters and we're going to be streaming, and like the fact that we're going to be streaming, on a major streamer that it can be seen all over the country, I think is really great because, back in the day, like Pat was on SNL in the early 90s, and that was a time where it was syndicated television, so it wasn't like today where we're like, you can watch something on like YouTube or TikTok or whatever. It was like you had to be in front of the TV on Saturday night and watch it live. And so the numbers were really, really high. It was like 13 million people an episode would watch. So I think the idea that like we're taking this really, really popular phenomenon and that it's going to be like on a major streamer, I'm just hoping that we're going to get a really broad audience of folks who want to watch it because it's like
Right.
it's about gender, it's about transness, but it's also about like 90s nostalgia. It's also about an artist's relationship to their work and how that changes like as time passes. It's about comedy, about SNL. So I'm hoping that we yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited that like that a large like population will have access to it.
Right. Yeah. And everyone will have their different interpretations of it based on their environments, how they grew up, what they were exposed to,
Yeah.
some revelation moments, like, oh, I didn't pick that up then, and how you put it into like what it is now, where we've grown to as a society. So all
Yeah.
of those come into, especially, you know, judgment too, right? Because people are so vicious, and they judge, and they judge what they don't know. It's a projection, so people will do that when they're watching the project, and they say, like, love me or hate me, do one or the other. But if they're talking, it's a good thing, right? But yeah, and then but it's highly educational, and in films, people judge, but in society, where people judge too because of the topic, right? And I remember I was in Atlanta, and there was these big billboards of, like, trans shows, and these huge like trans shows happening, and I was like, whoa, this is so new. Like, I was there in 2018, and it's a thing. It's like massive in the South, where
Mhm.
it's like they're like the stars, and it's super famous there. So and then the education that you tapped into about, trans, and in Paris, and how it was like the thing to go to, and the comedy scene. I was deep into the comedy scene in New York City, and there's so many, it's overwhelming. But by watching your project, I was definitely like learning and more about that. I mean, I could just
Mhm.
like go for entertainment and to be learned, and it's like its own genre. But I didn't know about it. So I mean, like I said, a lot of people are going to be, like, I think, eyes open to new experiences, and new just being interested. and
Yeah.
and it's so important, because there's so much confusion on, like the split and the divide of everything. Not that it wasn't there before, it's just openly more talked about, and now we're creating systems to protect each other as humans. But it's highly informative on a level of someone who, like, that one person who was like really confused, like, I don't, or not a boy, not a girl, or like just giving foundation for it. So how was that experience for you, being able to be an advocate and speak in that area that you know so much about, but be able to lay foundation through film for the people in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's interesting. I think the film, like, I didn't think about it like as advocacy really, because I think what's weird about today is they're just being trans is already political today, which is so weird. It's like just existing is a political act. That feels odd because, we just all like, I think every human on earth just wants to like live and have a good life, right? So to me, the fact that like just trans people's existence and ability to sort of access basic things like, healthcare or whatever, be on a sports team or, just getting married or whatever, that those things are in question is really strange and is a problem. And so I think with the film, I wasn't really trying to do like any type of real advocacy. It was more just like the fact that the film is being made and that we're talking about these issues is just political because of the moment, kind of, if that makes any sense. And so I think, I don't know, like I think the film mostly, I think, really is like about like us looking at this question of like this figure from the 90s that didn't mean to have a certain context, but then ended up like having this, Julia Sweeney did not intend for Pat to be trans or gender nonconforming, but she created this character who kind of was. And so what does it mean to create something that like you didn't mean to, but then has this meaning assigned to it? And what's so cool about Julia is that she was willing to have this discussion and understand like that this character had a lot of meaning for people and how people were reading it. And so for me, it's kind of like the biggest and coolest thing about the film really was the fact that you can have Julia who comes from a different perspective than I do, and we can have a conversation and unpack what this show meant together and really like be really open to having that conversation. And it's not political and it's not heated. It's just like we're both humans and, let's look at this thing together. And so I think for me, I would hope that that is like a takeaway for how to have hard conversations and how to, at the end of the day, like lower the temperature on things and just be like, we're all humans. We can agree or disagree, but as long as we have respect for each other, believe in each other's right to exist and have a good life and just like cohabitate this earth, then we can move through things and we don't have to like cancel each other on the internet. We don't have to yell at each other. We can just have a conversation. So for me, that's like the biggest
Yeah,
takeaway
yeah,
from.
yeah. Love that. Love that. And what I'm encapsulating here also is She was the vessel. She
Yeah.
was the vessel, and it's a birth of creation, which is art, and it's a birth as humanity, as you said. It's just
Yeah.
like a birth, like we're all human here. And then
Yeah.
she was so unapologetic about it, like the way she handled it as a warrior too. Like she wasn't, she just like this is what it was. Those were the times. I am a thespian. I'm a creator, and did what she did. And she was this magnet for people who identified, and then who began to open up like sparks of conversation while it danced, while like everyone else is trying to figure it out, but all the people behind closed doors already knew the things. It was just gave an opportunity for people to come out and say something. So whether you
Yeah.
are like being an advocate or not, you're just being you, like Pat was being Pat, and you identified as Pat so many different ways, and that lineage. Because I was thinking when I'm watching it, like, yo, like, you know what I mean? Like, if I took something that I was like that lovable about, and then like, it stuck with me, and then you like transmuted it into this story, that's questionable. That's like that's a human choice, and that's
Yeah.
your. So I was thinking about your path and your life and who you
Yeah.
are, what you've grown through, what you've gone through to have this like connection. But it's like it's great because the association with SNL, it's classic, it's comedy, there's pain in life, you want to
Mhm.
express yourself, and then there's like forgiveness and permission through filmmaking, through storytelling, through your education, through being human, to be able to like connect to these other energetic beings, and share this collective consciousness of who you are and who you embody, which is that lineage of Pat. So and you're putting it into 2026 and moving forward. So that's kind of my debrief on it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting because Pat has meant so much for me. I don't really identify as Pat in the sense, in a way I do because like I think Pat is like synonymous with transness in a way, but like, but to the point of the film, sometimes like nobody wants to identify with Pat because Pat in the film is like, like everybody just spending all their time trying to be like, what are you, a man or a woman? And also like in the sketches, Pat like has no friends and Pat is sort of like drooling and like weird and like unattractive and like all these things, And so I
Yeah.
think that's where the reclamation comes in. And it's like, I love the idea of making Pat cool, of like
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
Pat cool again and kind of reimagining what it means to be a Pat is kind of a piece of the film in itself is like, how do we make this thing that was considered to be like ugly and nerdy and chunky and all these sort of like negative, things and actually like make that character feel how do we reclaim it? So that's
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
piece.
Well, my thought on that is, it could go on a journey, but a thought or a reflective exploration could be like maybe there's some ego involved, like who wants to identify and associate with no friends or being shamed and blamed or like not lovable, like, and
Yeah,
that's hard for us to look at ourselves in that like space of like loneliness or darkness. I mean, that goes like in a different direction, but that's why maybe people don't want to identify in those kind of in ways.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, yeah. So what did you shoot it on?
Yeah, so we shot it on what did we shoot it on? I want to say an Alexa, which is like a pretty, standard film camera that's really great. And
Yes.
yeah, we shot it on two different Alexas, and our cinematographer Christine Ng is amazing. She shot like Poker Face and just ton of like great shows, and yeah, we had a great time. So we were really lucky to have her on board.
How did you pick your DP and the rest of your crew?
Yeah, so there are people. So I had already worked with Christine. So I guess I had two DPs, Christine Ng and Mego Lin, and both of them I'd worked with before on different things. A lot of commercial work with both of them. And so they are just both like female DPs who are amazing, who just like know their stuff, and I feel like who would be really down for the ride. So, and then with my producers, it's all people that like to work with. I would say like folks that I'd already worked with before, but then my producer, Caryn Capotosto, who's like the main producer, we were sort of match made because I was at this commercial company and they were interested in the project and they were like, why don't you work with Caryn? Because Caryn was doing some work with them at the time. And honestly, she was so great for it because a lot of the films that she makes are pop culture documentaries. Like she made a documentary on Little Richard. She made the Anna Nicole Smith documentary. She made the Mr. Rogers documentary. Like so she's kind of really obsessed with these pop culture characters, which I think, is a different angle of Pat, being like a sort of a pop culture nostalgic doc. So
Yeah.
yeah, and then we have our executive producers that we brought on, Alan Cumming and Lilly Wachowski, who are both amazing, and they really helped in terms of, Alan especially helped in getting some visibility for the project, and so that's been really great.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I see that you went to film school. So they say, oh, yeah, well, when you go to any college, or they say, oh, the people you are going to school with, those are going to be the future filmmakers of tomorrow. And sometimes you work with those people. Do you find through your education that you create with some people you went to school with?
I actually haven't done a lot of collaboration with the people that I went to film school with, but I have collaborated a lot with people that I've done like fellowships with afterwards, or, like because in the film world there's like a ton of like fellowships that you can do in labs, and those folks I've definitely like done a lot of work with. But I don't think you have to go to film school to be a filmmaker by any means. I think like if you can avoid student debt, please do, like learn from my mistakes, like just I think it's more like you can go like work on a project, kind of see how it's done, and then go do it yourself. And I really recommend like having a really proactive approach in that way. So
Wow, fantastic. My the next and last question I was going to say, because a lot of people tune into the show, I was going to ask exactly, I'm still going to ask the question because there
yeah.
could be more, but exactly a filmmaker now, a future filmmaker, like that, what you just said is exactly
Yeah.
would probably be the answer. But if there's something, a book or anything that a filmmaker could do, a younger you just getting started, or even now, how do you pivot and shift with technology going into 2027?
Yeah. I mean, I think like, one thing, like I said, I think what's cool about the film world is like when you're on a set, a set needs like a lot of hands to make a film work, right? So if you can like be a production assistant, if you can like ask if you know someone who's making a film, you can ask if you can shadow the director. Like I think witnessing the process, and seeing how it's done is really like a great form of education, and you can do that. But like for something like screenwriting, there's Sundance Collab. Like Sundance has does courses that are like called Collab, which is, you don't have to go to film school. They do cost money, but there's also master class, that also costs money, but like less, way less than if you went to film school. And I would just really encourage like, maybe try to take a course online, try to shadow a director, kind of just be proactive in those ways, because you don't, I think, back in the day, like the idea was you'll go to film school and then like the studio will like give you a three-picture deal. It's like times have changed. Like the economy is shit, so like anything that you can do to try to like, just do it yourself. Like the positive thing is, to your point, like technology has changed so that the power is more like within our own hands. Like, we didn't used to have iPhones that you could film on. I'm not saying you should film everything on an iPhone, but like you could. There's no problem with that. Like, so I think, I don't know, I think being proactive and believing in your vision and just, asking for help, asking for mentorship from people that you know, or, taking classes so that you can make more connections in that way is really good.
Love that. I love all of that. And yeah, you can, I see that you can, I haven't done it, but you could put these anamorphic lenses on an
Yeah.
iPhone. And I think I just got the email today that Sundance Collab is doing something, I think, with TikTok, and it's a free educational course that you can apply June 3rd. First time I heard about it. Now I'm
Yeah.
hearing about it again. So that
Yeah.
is wonderful. The Sundance Collab, people can tune in, look it up, and everything else you mentioned. A big, huge
Oh,
congratulations.
thank you. Thank you so
I'm
much.
so excited for you and the just everything, and I appreciate spending time with me. Thank you so much,
Oh my
meeting
gosh,
with
thank
me.
you so much.
And
Great
then
talk.
just lastly, real quick, Julie Cohen, who did the intersects, because you mentioned, someone mentioned
Yeah.
intersects in your documentary. She did. It was at Tribeca a few years ago. She did Everybody, the
Yes. Yeah.
intersects documentary. She was on the podcast a couple seasons ago, so it
Oh,
was like
amazing.
it.
Cool.
It was, and it's Pride Month too, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's all like tea like that.
Perfect. Full circle.
Yay!
Yeah, I love it.
Full circle. Okay,
Yeah.
a big, huge
Thank you
congratulations.
so much. So good to meet you. Thanks for all your good questions.